Hey guys, so this week in writing we're going to talk about some things that you can do to make your writing even better. Today's lesson is all about leaving spaces. So we're going to talk about leaving spaces and why it's important to do that when you're writing. So I have some little pictures here. I don't know if you can tell what these are or not, but we have spaghetti noodles and then we have spaghetti meatballs. So these are just little pictures to kind of remind you when you're writing of some things that you need to do. So the noodles here stand for leaving spaces between your letters in your word. Oops. So I'm going to write letter spaces. So what that means is just leaving enough room in between the letters that you write so that it's easy to read. Let me show you why you need the noodle spaces. So if I was trying to write the word, let's just say I write the word play, and I don't leave any spaces. This is the word play without, oops, can y'all see that? Without any noodle spaces. Can you read that very well? I definitely can't. So when you leave a little noodle space, you just leave a small space in between the letters so that it's easy to read. So writing play with noodle spaces looks like that. Now, a noodle space is not a giant space. So if I'm writing the word play, I wouldn't need to leave huge spaces like this either. You just need the perfect amount of space to where you can read the word. It's not too far apart, but it's not too close together either. So I'm going to take another marker here. This is not a good example of noodle spaces, and this is not a good example of noodle spaces. When you're writing words, like I said, you just need a small amount of space in between your letters there. Now let's talk about meatball spaces. Meatball spaces that stands for spaces between words. So I'm going to write word spaces. Whenever you're writing a sentence, you need a little more space in between your words to separate them. So if I wrote the sentence, I like to play, without word spaces first, let's see what that would look like. Okay, and there's I like to play. Do you see how there's no spaces in between my words? Not one. So that makes this whole sentence just look like one word to me. It looks like I like to play. All one word though, not a sentence. So when you use your meatball spaces, you're putting a space in between each word. You may have also been taught in kindergarten like to use 2 fingers to do your spaces. You need to use your spaces like you have been taught. So if I'm going to write the sentence correctly with spaces, I like, my finger's like a big meatball, to, I actually ran out of room and have to go down to the next part, play. Okay, so see how I left just enough space that the words are separated. That way I can actually read what they say. So this is a great example of using your spaces correctly in sentences. Also, I've used enough space here where my letters are spaced out in my words too, so it's easier to read that way. Meatball spaces are not this. When you do meatball spaces, you do not need to leave ginormous spaces. Just enough space to where you can separate the words apart. If you write like this to where you have huge spaces in between your words, you're going to end up wasting a lot of paper if you're writing in your journal because you have so many ginormous spaces. So this is not necessary, and you don't want to do this either. Okay, this is the perfect example of how you should space your words, and this is the perfect example of how you should space your letters. So let's go down to the bottom now and do a little bit of practice. Okay, I'm going to start by writing I'll just write about Tank. He's one of my favorite topics. Okay, so remember I'm going to leave a noodle space, so not too close but not too far apart. And then a big meatball space, not too big, not too small. Dogs. Ew, I didn't do a very good job of spacing dog out. It's a little bit close together. My dog's name is Tank. Period. Okay, let's look and see if I did my spaghetti and meatball spaces. Alright, so remember the spaghetti stands for letter spaces. Did I space out my letters good? Well, there's room for a noodle there. I did not do a very good job of spacing out dog. There's like, all those letters are connected. It makes it a little hard to read. But there's room here. I left enough space in between all of these letters. So I did a pretty good job on my noodle spaces. Did I leave space in between my words? Did I make good meatball spaces? Let's see, there'd be a meatball here. Good, I had good spacing. Meatball, meatball, meatball. So I did do a pretty good job making spaghetti and meatball spaces. So just remember, whenever you're writing, it's important to leave spaces in between your letters so that it's not all jumbled and hard to read, like this word up here was. And it's also important to leave spaces between your words, but not giant spaces because you waste a lot of paper. It's got to be kind of like, it reminds me of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. You've got to find the just right amount to use when you're writing. So leaving just enough space to separate those words like this, but not so much that they're spread out and not so little that it's all jumbled up. So it's important to like use your finger whenever you're spacing, and you don't need to draw spaghetti and meatballs in your sentences like this. I just did this as an example, but don't start drawing spaghetti and meatballs. It's more for you to picture in your head as you're writing your sentence. So let me go to my journal now, because in a minute you're going to go to your journal and write a story for the day. It could be a story that you've already been working on and you want to finish, or you can start a new story. But you do need to write probably for at least about 15 minutes every day. That way you can become a better writer. Alright, I would go to my next blank page here. Remember, always, you're not ever going to skip a page. Even if it's on the back, you write here. I am writing on the next page though because my marker bled through. You don't ever use a marker in your writing journal. You always use a pencil. I'm just using a marker because on video it's really hard to see if I write in pencil. But you use your pencil. Okay, so when I go to write my story, I write the date at the top. Remember, we always start by writing the date. Okay? So I've got my date, September 14th, 2020. 9 because September is the 9th month of the year. 14 because it is the 14th day of September. And 20 because it is 2020. That's the year. Alright. My story today, I think that I'm going to write about Hadley today. So, and I'm just writing right now to show you, to remind you, I guess, how to use your spaces. So, when we write our story, we always start on the far left side. We don't start in the middle of the page. We start to the far left with a capital letter. So, notice how I spaced out my enough to where it's not jam-packed together. I can tell the two separate letters apart. My daughter's name, okay, and I put a space in between my and daughter's because that's two separate words. My daughter's name, I don't remember how to spell name. Okay, I'm going to sound it out and try my best. Name. That looks weird though. Okay, underlining it and moving on. My daughter's name is, okay, so finger space and write is. Okay, I'm to the end of the line, so I'm going to go back down to the next line all the way over to the left and write my next word. My daughter's name is Hadley. Hadley. Period. Okay, so here's my first sentence. Notice how I started with a capital letter. I put spaces in between my letters, not giant spaces, but enough space that I can tell what each letter is. It's not all jumbled together. And then I used finger spaces in between each word so that there was enough space that I can tell the words apart. They're not so close together that it looks all like one big, ginormous, long word. And my words are not all so far apart that I'm taking up a ton of space on my paper. So I found the just right amount of space. Okay, let me write another sentence. My daughter's name is Hadley. She has brown hair. I think that will be my next sentence. She. So I'm leaving a little bit of space between my period and the next word, about a finger space, or a meatball space if you want to say. She has. How do I spell has? You know what? I could probably check in my writer's notebook. Let me go grab it. I can check in my writer's notebook. In the word wall section. I wonder if it's in here. Okay. Has starts with a H. So, gotta find the H's. There's A, B, there's the C's, D, E, F, G. Oh, here's H. Okay, now has, ass. Okay, is the first letter, then what's the second letter? A. I'm looking for H-A. Well, here's an H-A. Add. That's not it. And. Hand. That's not it. Ass, has. Oh, there's the word I was looking for. Has. It's H-A-S. All right. I used my word wall to help me figure out that word. H-A-S. She has brown. Ooh, I remember that's also in here. It's on my color words. Ah, no, it's not. Why is that the one word that's not in here? Okay. Well, that's a bummer. I can sound that word out, though. Brown. Oh, you know what? One more place I thought to look. Well, I don't have a picture dictionary in here. It may be on a picture dictionary. Oh! If you have a crayon that's brown, you could look at your crayons. Brown, okay. Almost ran out of room there. She has brown hair. Air. Period. Okay, I left spaces in between each word. I have spaces in between my letters so it's easier to read. I'm going to write one more sentence. My daughter's name is Hadley. She has brown hair. Her eyes are blue, I think will be my next sentence. Her, capital H, her eyes. How do you spell eyes? Eyes. It sounds like I-S, but I know I-S spells is, so that cannot be right. Eyes. Eyes. I know that sometimes sneaky E makes a vowel say its name. I don't know. Eyes? That kind of looks weird, though. I think I'm going to underline that and ask when I have time. Her eyes are, so I have my finger space, and I'll put my next finger space, blue. Period. And I could even look for blue here since it's there. I can't believe we're missing brown. I never noticed that. Blue. Okay. So, noticed I used my finger spaces when I was writing to space out my words. I put little noodle spaces between my letters so that they weren't all jumbled together. And now I have a story that is easy to read because I have spaced. So remember to always use your spaces when you're writing, and today you're going to practice using your spaces while you write your story today.